Hello everyone, welcome to a quick unscripted video, which I just recently decided I want to make. Now, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, but for a while, just kind of brushed it off as an idea that I wasn't ever going to actually do because something just felt weird about it. But to be completely honest, I think the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized this makes the most sense for me and my reviews, and it kind of feels like I'm making a bigger deal of it than I need to. Basically, I'm changing my rating system for albums. Now, personally, I've always been a fan of the idea of a rating system. I know there's some people who don't like it and think, oh, you put too much emphasis on the score, people will just skip ahead to the end and watch what the score is. But really, I do think the rating system is a very key part to me sharing my opinions on an album, especially when I often lack the proper real words and explanations to give context to why an album gets a certain rating. And really, I think it's up to the audience how they want to interpret my reviews. Do they want to just emphasize the score? Do they want to actually hear what I have to say about the album? If you don't care about the score, then just listen to what I say about the album and think about it that way. If you just want to see the score, you can just look at the score and not watch my video. I'm fine with that. But I was realizing the more I thought about it, I feel like the problem with my current rating system, it's not that I emphasize the score too much. It's not that I don't want people to pay attention to the score. I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But the thing for me really with the rating system is that I just feel like it's kind of misleading, and I also feel like I'm early enough in my YouTube journey that it doesn't really feel all that weird or like I'm breaking tradition too much. I have been posting under Simon Talks Music for almost 3 years now. It goes way back onto my blog, which I started in 2022. And because of that, it does feel a little bit like I'm breaking tradition. And that's kind of what has held me back from doing this for a while. But also, I'm early enough in my YouTube journey specifically that I just feel like it makes the most sense. And before I get into explaining what my new rating system is going to be, I just want to quickly say really, at the end of the day, it's kind of just another way of me acknowledging that things change. Change is a part of life, it happens. I'm open to the possibility of potentially changing my rating system again in the future. I think I have a rating system now that I'm going to be happier with. But it might change as well if I realize I think there's a better way to do that. And really, just the way that I make my videos could change. My taste in music can change. I already look back at albums that I've reviewed in the past and think I gave it this score, and even based on the rating system that I've been using all this time, if I were to rate it again on that scale, I might give it a different score. My opinion on the album might have changed. So yeah, I don't want to just put too much emphasis on the score of every review that I make and make it all about, oh, did this album get an 8? Did it get a 7? Did it get whatever? And I'd rather recognize that there's more to it than that. There's more detailed explanations for why I like an album or why I don't like an album. And sometimes I have a weird opinion on an album. Like, I can't figure out if I really like the album or not. There might be certain songs that really stand out, but maybe the whole album's a little bit much. But it's not really as perfect as I'd like it to be. I just have to realize that. I mean, part of me also just says I don't really want it to be that perfect. I don't want it to be that easy where I can just say, oh, an 8 is better than a 7, a 7 is better than a 6, a 6 is better than a 5. I mean, yeah, like it is, but my opinion on the album could change. I might give one album a 7 because I respect it a lot, but maybe I don't enjoy listening to it as much as another album that I give a 6. And maybe the album that I give a 6, I feel like has more technical flaws, but I personally enjoy it more. And really, at the end of the day, my ratings aren't necessarily based on how good I think the album is. They're not necessarily based on how much I personally like the album. It's kind of a bit of both. And at the end of the day, yeah, like it's all my opinion, it's all my feelings on the album. And yeah, I think it's more based on how much I like the album, but that also is more complicated because is it how much I enjoy listening to the album? Is it how much I feel like I got out of listening to the album, even if I never want to return to it again? I think there's a lot of things that make this more complicated, and honestly, as much as I was just talking about sort of wanting it to be perfect, I'm kind of glad it isn't. I think it makes for more interesting reviews. there may be albums where I go, I can't believe I'm giving this score after everything I've said about it. Maybe I've made it sound really negative and then I give it a 7. Maybe I've made it sound really positive and then give it a 5. The point is, getting back on topic to sort of explain a little bit better. So my new rating system on paper is not really going to be all that different from the current one. I'm still going to be rating albums out of 10. The only difference being I'm getting rid of half points. Yes, they have in some ways been useful in the past with albums where, I can't decide if it's a 6 or a 7. I can't decide if it's a 5 or a 6. So I go right in the middle and give it a 5.5 or a 6.5. But I've been thinking recently about just how flawed this system is for me, and I'm not saying it can't work for other people if they want to rate albums like this, but the big thing that I've noticed is I've sort of started to set albums into different categories based on their ratings, where if I consider an album to be among the very best of the best of any albums that I've heard in that year, or in other words, just if I find an album to be like really, really exceptional, I give it a 9.5. I've never given out a 10 before. I will probably end up doing that at some point. So, it's always been like a 9.5 or a 10 is, the really, really exceptional category. But then that means a 9 doesn't have as much meaning. I could give an album a 9 and it sounds like this amazing, wow, it's a 9 out of 10, but it's because it's lower than a 9.5. So, at the end of the day, I don't want to overthink it too much because every album's different. I have different opinions on every album. There's different reasons why different albums could get a rating. But at the end of the day, if you want like a very vague example for like what certain ratings mean, for example, think about all the albums that I've given a 9.5 in the past. If I were to re-rate those albums on my current rating system, as long as my opinion on the album hasn't changed, then I'd give it a 9. Basically anything that I gave an 8, an 8.5, or a 9, I'm just going to categorize as an 8. To me, a great album is still an 8 out of 10 or higher. But again, there are albums where I might be going back and forth on whether or not I think they're great, and I might, give it an 8, and then a week later I might listen to it and go, actually, it should have been a 7. I think a 7, a 6, both kind of in the decent to pretty good category. I could find an album really good and I could give it like a really strong 7. I'm not going to assign official like strengths for each rating, like, oh, is it a light 7, is it a strong 7, is it a very strong 7, but I might say it in the review. I might not as well, and that's okay. The one sort of place where I kind of like the half point system is when you get into the really low scores and I'm trying to decide, is this like a 2? Is it a 1.5? Is it a 1? And I kind of like how those numbers just get progressively worse slowly. Like a 1.5 just seems so significantly worse than a 2. But really, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to confuse things. I just want to keep it to 11 possible ratings: a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10. There's 11 possible ratings an album could get. And again, I can emphasize the strength of those ratings. And really, at the end of the day, if I'm caught trying to decide, like, oh, is this a 5 or is it a 6? Instead of just going for a 5.5, I could just say, I'll give this a 5, a very, very strong 5. Possibly a 6, but I'll put 5 out of 10 in the description. Like, I can say things like that. I can emphasize it's a very strong 5. I almost gave it a 6. If I really feel like that's necessary to communicate my opinion on the album, I can just say that. I think at the end of the day, really what it is that I don't like the rating system I've been using for the past few years. I don't like how a 9 out of 10 looks better than it actually is. And it also creates a little bit more uncertainty for my year-end lists. If I categorize all the 8s, 8.5s, and 9s all into 8 out of 10s, it makes it a little bit harder to predict where they're going to fall on my year-end list. You might see I gave something a strong 9. Well, that kind of confirms it's going to be a lot higher than the albums I gave like a light 8. Unless my opinion on it changes, and that's the other thing. Like, of course, you're not going to be able to know for sure. I might give an album a 9 under my new rating system, and another album an 8, and I might swap them around on my year-end list if that's how I feel at the end of the year. The other thing too that I should mention, it is kind of to some extent me wanting to just fit in with other reviewers. I know most people either use a 5-point scale with half points or a 10-point scale with whole points. But, I also just think it makes it easier to, if I'm comparing my review to someone else's, chances are that review is going to be on the same scale that my reviews are. I mean, I think most people would probably agree a great album is like an 8 out of 10 or higher. I guess it depends on the person, but the point is, I just feel like it makes it more consistent for me with other reviewers. And really, I think it helps me communicate my feelings on an album better because people are used to this sort of rating system more. I don't really know of a lot of people who use half points out of 10. Like, I'm sure there are other people who do that. But for me, it doesn't really represent the best way that I want to communicate my feelings on an album. So yeah, I actually was originally planning on making this kind of video as an April Fool's joke about changing my rating system. And then I actually started to think about it and went, you know what, I actually kind of want to do that for real and actually change my rating system. And then I decided to just make another April Fool's video instead. So yeah, hopefully this isn't too weird a change for my viewers. The other thing is I don't really have a super large fan base anyway. I think I have like 10 subscribers or something like that. I'm not looking at it right now as I film this, but to anyone who does watch my videos, hopefully this doesn't make you stop watching, and if it does, I'm fine with that. That's okay. Thank you for watching for as long as you have. I know I'm probably making a much bigger deal of this than I should, but again, like, I don't need to compare all of my reviews in the past to my current ones and look at the ratings and go, oh, well, this album got a 9 in the past, but then this other album that I like more got an 8 now in my new rating system. That doesn't work. Oh no, it doesn't make sense. It's change. Change happens. I'm just making a change that I think will make my videos better, or at least I'm gonna feel better about my videos and my ratings. And yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to come on here and give a quick update and explain that. And yeah, that does mean you'll probably be seeing a lot more 8 out of 10s than you did before, because some of them I would give an 8.5 or a 9, but really I just feel like it makes the most sense to do this. It makes the most sense for me, and I think I've rambled about this for long enough now, so I'll end this video here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon.